Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Mel, and I am a somatic experiencing practitioner, a relationship coach, and a published author. And I'm here with my wonderful colleague, Megan Vaudry of Non-Monogamy Coaching Vancouver. And together we co-facilitate the Vancouver Poly 101 discussions. So today, Megan, we are talking about our discussion for April, which was all about being polyamorous in a monogamous world. And I love how these discussions are going, first off.
Absolutely.
We're consistently getting between 20 to 30 people and such a good range of experience and ages and backgrounds. And I'm curious to know for you, like, was there anything that really stood out for you, like overall, about how this discussion went?
Well, I completely agree with everything that you're saying in terms of being pleased that how it's going in general. It's really nice to see folks come out and just not be afraid to really share about their experiences. And there's just something so powerful about being in the room with people and having these discussions that probably wouldn't come up naturally if we weren't having this facilitated discussion, right? So I'm constantly pleased by how that feels and how that's working and just what's coming out in the room. And the thing that stuck out to me about this discussion was that there was a lot of unifying factors in terms of what was touching folks. But then there was also a lot of differences just depending on people's on their ages and on their family of origin, on their religion, on their job status, just these kind of different factors that show up in life, different factors of a monogamous world, right? Different facets of the monogamous environment. And I really enjoyed just hearing the differences and the similarities in there. One of the things that was fairly unifying was family.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how about you? What did you notice about what did you notice about that?
I keep going back to something that was shared towards the end of the discussion when we were talking about like what actually helps us to be resilient as polyamorous people in a monogamous world. And someone said it's spaces like this. It's like having the space to have these conversations and to know that you're not alone. And that kind of ties into what you're saying about family, because I think when we struggle with our family of origin for whatever reason, let alone polyamorous reasons, there is a sense of isolation in that experience. And I mean, I think for some people, polyamory can be a means to reparent ourselves, like heal those childhood wounds of like, I didn't get all the attention and connection I needed as an infant. Nothing wrong with that. But I think to actually be in these community spaces where we get to have the conversations, where we get to be supportive of each other. And even like if you're not sharing anything, just hearing someone else has had an experience that in some way resembles yours. I think it's very comforting. I think it's very validating. I'm always hearing people share things. I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, I remember. I've been there. And sometimes the stuff that I've forgotten I experienced. But that theme about family, we ended up talking a lot in the discussion about like the stigma that comes up and the way that impacts us. And I really heard a lot of folks share about how it had impacted their relationship with their family, whether it was like no longer feeling as connected with family or just feeling like they have to mask and hide a part of themselves around their families.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I noticed too is that the through thread with a lot of the stigma that comes from family, from sharing about polyamory with family, is it's a misguided attempt for care. Right. And so what I noticed is, depending on the gender of the person involved, there would be like kind of usually like a polarized gendered judgment about either, someone taking advantage of other people or being taken advantage of, usually dependent on gender, right? It tends to be divided along those lines just because of our cultural understanding about sexuality and about relationships and about this, commodified version of sexuality that we see in the media and in culture at large. And so that was really condensed into these judgments and these misguided attempts to care. Right. And so I really do. I hear what you're saying about this, um, about community, supportive community being, being the thing that can like come up and, support people around these experiences of stigmatization, and not just with family, but also, we talked about in the workplace, folks.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that I found really interesting was that folks had really similar experiences about not being able to talk about being polyamorous in the workplace at large, really, not dependent on work environment, across a wide variety of different work settings, and how that really showed up, and how folks really felt like they were, that they were othered in their workplace, right?
And
So yeah, rather than being able to contribute to all of these normal everyday discussions about like what I did with my partner on the weekend, and who I'm dating now, and whether it's becoming serious, like, oh, did we have the talk yet, like, are we exclusive, not
yeah,
being able to participate in any of those natural normal discussions that come up in a workplace, but then also, needing to make these really subtle but important decisions in the moment about what to reveal and how much about one's personal life to reveal when we're polyamorous.
it's a lot of mental labor,
Yes.
right? And then having to track, what have I revealed to whom? Am I being consistent in this? And the fear of, what might be the consequences. And I
Mhm.
mean, I think there were really some really sweet stories shared about positive experiences of coming out and monogamous people in one's life being like, oh, that's interesting. And I think someone shared something about like, family members just pretending it hadn't been said, and let's just keep going as
Absolutely.
normal. But since the discussion, I was chatting with a friend, and they shared with me a story about someone who's a university professor at quite a well-known university in the US, and who managed to get both of their partners hired on as spousal hires.
Oh,
So like when you have like a big job and you're like, well, I have to relocate, you should find a job for my spouse
yeah,
too,
yeah.
or something, or like it was something along those lines. But they got that for both of their partners. And I was like, how interesting. And it made me think about like, well, is there also a level of privilege
Mm,
involved in how we can be out in the workplace? I mean, for
mm,
me, I have the privilege, if I work for myself, my work is all about this. If you don't, if you're working with me and you don't know that I'm not monogamous, I don't know what's going on there. Um, but I think that, that's an interesting piece to think about, the ways that our privileges can either support us in being able to
mm,
be more open and be accepted, or the ways that the lack of privilege may feel like it's a challenge. And I think also sometimes like there's a fear because we fear that we're going to be stigmatized and that might lead us to losing privileges.
mhm,
And that's something that I don't think we really got into in the discussion. It's one of the things that I wish we could have like unpacked a bit more, but maybe
mm.
that's for a whole other conversation.
Yeah, privilege and polyamory, and the intersections of stigma and privilege and
Yeah.
polyamory. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good topic for sure. Yes, so I do. Yeah, I hear you about that, and yeah, do you want to share a little bit more about anything that you picked up during the?
Yeah, I made some notes when people were talking
Mhm,
about the ways that it has impacted their friendships.
mhm, mhm,
Because I definitely had that experience myself of when I started to be more open about my polyamory, a lot of my friendships shifted.
mhm,
And it was either great or terrible.
mhm,
It was either people were like really supportive and curious,
mhm,
or it was get away from me. And I remember visiting a friend of mine, a very close female friend, and like she was home, it was her day off, her husband was at work. Her husband mysteriously came home while we were visiting and was like, "Oh, I took the rest of the day off." And and he was like really positioning himself in between us, and I was like, "Is he feeling threatened? Is he wanting to get involved? Like
mhm,
what's happening here?" And I mean, I also had some friendships where people started to proposition me and I'm like, "What,
mhm,
why is this the thing that you're doing now?" So, I really related a lot to what people were sharing with the way that their friendships changed. Like some people were saying like their friendships did become more tense. Um, and people were being more guarded. But on the other hand, people being more freely open with each other.
Mhm.
And that's the beautiful part of it. I think when you have the privilege to be more open, you kind of become that flame that attracts people to you.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, yeah, oh, I've always thought about that. And it can be the doorway for other people to discover more about themselves. But I think one of the biggest impacts is when there is that when the friendships become more tense, it can feel very isolating.
Mhm.
And I think, that's one of the places where having these community discussions
Mhm.
can be really supportive
Mhm.
because it helps combat that isolation.
Mhm.
But I do think that, we kind of slip into sometimes a little too much of like, I'm just going to be in my own little polyamorous bubble and
Mm.
benefit from being around people who have different kinds of relationships. We
Yeah.
all do.
Yeah.
And there's a loss in
Mhm.
that perspective. Like I think people can get a little bit myopic if everyone they know is polyamorous and the only conversations they're having about relationships are about how great polyamory is.
There can actually be a reverse stigma that comes up. Yeah,
Yes.
I've had folks in the communities that I circulate in tell me they're embarrassed to admit that they're monogamous
Mhm.
because of this, this bubble that we've created, right? And so, yeah, absolutely, these shifting of friendships and shifting of perceptions.
Yeah.
I've read some interesting studies about that have been done on the perception of folks who are polyamorous, and across all factors, there tends to be just a difference in opinion about folks who are polyamorous.
Yeah.
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 And
We
so
do experience what's called marginalization stress.
we do. We do.
And I
Absolutely.
I I would say, like, it's not the same as other forms of marginalization stress. It's its own unique thing.
Mhm.
But the challenges there are real. And I think that, when we talk about, like, people in alternative circles feeling ashamed for feeling monogamous, I
Yeah.
think that's because in the way that we try to combat that marginalization stress, we can sometimes get a little too grandiose.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's not, I mean, grandiosity in any shape or form is not
Mhm.
necessarily great.
Mhm.
And it's funny, when we were getting ready for this discussion, in my brain, my wonderful dyslexic brain, I kept going, oh, being monogamous in a polyamorous world. Oh, no, 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 being polyamorous in a monogamous world.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah. And thank you so much for naming marginalization stress. That is, and I think that especially you were talking about friendships being affected, relationships being affected. I think, especially in a transition period from identifying as monogamous to identifying as polyamorous, there can be such a stress during that shift.
Yeah.
And any stigma that's experienced from friends, from family, from whoever you happen to share that with on your journey can really get inside, like it can really get inside a person's head and really kind of undermine these, like what you're trying to shift about yourself and the beliefs that you're trying to shift about yourself, right? And so I think it is so important to hopefully be able to get involved in a community discussion of some kind, read, immerse yourself, listen to podcasts, immerse yourself in information and people who are polyamorous. Like, as much as we're
Mhm.
talking about not wanting to become myopic about it, but also when you're on the beginning of that journey, making sure to inform yourself properly and make sure that you don't feel alone. Because as social creatures, we do really, we change so much from the information that we absorb and from the people that we're around. And
Yeah.
so remembering to immerse yourself at least a little bit in your new paradigm in order to cement those new, those changing values and changing norms inside your own self, right? So I think that that is so important if you're shifting from monogamy to polyamory.
And something that some people shared about was that there's a kind of joy to be found in being very open.
Yeah.
This joy of bamboozling the monogamous people.
Yeah.
Uh, and being just so open and confident in that. And that's where I think the discussions really help, is it helps you get more confident so that
Mhm.
you can do that. I know for
Yeah.
me, when I was in my early days, which is now like, oh my God, 15 years ago, like that was what the discussion groups gave me, was that confidence to be
Yeah.
able to articulate to a stranger, this is what I do. I'm open about dating openly. I'm in primary relationship with myself, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Mhm.
how that um that is its own kind of practice, in a sense,
Mhm.
of being
Mhm.
able to stand
Mhm.
in that confidence and that joy. But we don't get to it by ourselves. I think if we're just
Mhm.
creating that by ourselves,
Mhm.
that does play into a kind of narcissism. But I
Mm.
think we're getting there with the support of community, with the support of our connections and our friendships, then it's
Yeah.
come from a really beautiful embodied place.
Mhm.
And I think in that place, we've also got the ability to empathize and be open to, not everyone's going to do this the same way. And
Mhm.
sometimes they have a different take, and that's okay for them, right?
Mhm.
But I really loved how we got into talking about the positives, and how that also supports creating more space and acceptance, right? Like
Absolutely.
those of us who have the ability to do that, who have the privilege to be open, who have the privilege to be visible in our relationships, how doing that we become the role models that other people seek.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one thing that that did stick out to me from the discussion was some people described that workplaces that were filled with that tend to skew along the younger side,
Mhm.
younger generation, being out about being polyamorous was not as
Yeah.
big of a deal. You know, it was
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, you're polyamorous. That's another option. You know, this is just another relationship style. And so in terms of outness, and I love that you're emphasizing, if you like, if we have the privilege and the ability to be out, that has so many benefits, not just for ourselves, but also for the community. And another thing I wanted to bring up is finding other polyamorous people out in
Mhm.
the wild, right? And so there are, you know, I think that you know, there's lots of different ways to flag or to let people know that you are polyamorous.
Mhm.
And so I love the idea of exploring things from, you know, the subtle to the obvious, right? So
Yeah.
when you're out in the world, when you're a polyamorous person existing in the monogamous world, you know, um how can you bring it into the conversation or bring it into awareness without it being like becoming the discussion itself,
Well, and
right?
people have things like they'll have tattoos or jewelry, or
Yeah.
they'll wear like an infinity heart, or
Mhm.
things with the poly flag colors. We have
Mhm.
these ways of flagging, just like we do for flagging if we're queer.
Yeah.
Um, and and I think that there could be more of that within the poly world.
Mhm.
Um, I do like this idea of like giving the suggestion of, hey, yeah, no, I'm an ally. Like I'm here.
Mhm.
I'm a polyamorous. Like
Mhm. Mhm.
you can
Mhm.
talk to me about this.
Mhm.
I actually have a T-shirt that I got from Alex Alberto that says "Ask me about polyamory."
Nice. Nice.
I
Yeah,
do
or
not
even
wear that T-shirt out enough.
yeah. I wanna see it. Yeah, or even, like, bringing things into the conversation subtly, saying something like, "Oh, you know, my partner's other partner," but just moving on in the conversation, you know, not you know, you can kinda bring in these little things and then see, you know, people might catch it, and then if you are around people who are allies, who are aware, or who are polyamorous themselves, that's a good sort of, way to bring it up subtly,
One of
right?
my favorite examples of that was from, this is my own experience, years ago when I worked at a matchmaking agency, and helping monogamous people get on the relationship escalator. It's quite the education. We had a work dinner, so it was like me and the other matchmakers and our boss. And I casually mentioned one of my boyfriends in conversation. I was like, one of my boyfriends and blah blah blah. And my boss kind of flipped around, was like, "One of your boyfriends? How many do you have?" And I was like, "3." And I continued on in the conversation. And like the other matchmakers who I worked with on a daily basis, they knew this about me.
Uh-huh, yeah.
And it was always amusing because there were occasionally times where I would come across someone's profile that I'm like, I've seen them elsewhere. Like, they're not monogamous, but okay. And but my boss was so scandalized by this,
Oh, okay.
but was in a total state of shock. And the fact that I just normalized it and kept going, I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure that she started going like, "Did I hear that correctly?"
Mm, mhm, mhm, mhm.
You know?
Yeah. So you may have deflected, and an opportunity for someone to stigmatize you,
Yep,
right? Because you just came into it, you normalized it, you were really confident, you made the statement and then moved on,
yep.
Yeah, and so I think that's such a beautiful example of how to, yeah, how to like we're talking about how to show up in the world, being confident, being proud, being seen, and allowing that path, like opening that path further for others as we do that,
And I
right?
think it is easier to do that when we are in a good space in our relationships.
Mhm.
You know, when we are feeling confident in our relationships, and, all relationships have difficulties. It's not like monogamous relationships run smoothly all the time. But I think being able to articulate, oh, this is because of this. This is what's
Mhm.
happening. And this is normal to have these
Mhm.
hiccups in polyamory. And this is what we're doing
Mhm.
to work through it. Because
Mhm.
then that doesn't give the other person to stigmatize it and be like, oh,
Mhm.
your relationship problems are because you're polyamorous. You
Yeah,
wouldn't have any of these problems if you were monogamous. And I'm like,
yeah,
yeah, maybe not, but you'd have a whole other set of problems if
yeah,
you're monogamous.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and that's where having that poly-affirming support, the
Mm,
work that both of us do as coaches, the work
yeah,
that poly-affirming therapists are doing,
mhm,
and
yeah,
in learning more about non-monogamy and how to be affirming in that support,
mhm,
all of it is empowering people to fight the stigma, to be
mhm,
able to be in that space of confidence.
yeah,
And we got into the conversation towards the end of like, how do we create more space and acceptance? And that I think so much about it is that we all have to work on that self-confidence.
mhm,
We have to have a more secure relationship to it. And I
mhm,
think at the beginning there could be a lot of doubt when you're like, am I messing up my life? Am I blowing up my world here? Like, is this all a terrible mistake?
yeah,
Um, and as we move through the grief of letting go of the monogamous mythology,
mhm,
we get into a different space with it. And that's a part of the conversation I wish we could have gone into more, is like
mhm,
how we actually let go of the monogamous mythology. And
mhm,
as you know, and people who listen to me and listening to
yeah,
us who know my work know that is something I'm very passionate about.
absolutely.
But I'm always curious to hear what other people's journeys have been with that.
Yeah, yeah, we didn't, and the other thing we didn't get into a lot was, yeah, like how these internalized mononormative ideas really impact us when we're in polyamorous relationships,
Yeah.
right? Like how we can actually show up with different expectations about how relationships should be that are based in monogamous thinking, showing up in relationships with some small amount of internalized doubt that this is the right path
Hmm.
or that this is going to work, you know? And so we really didn't get a chance to get into that, but I think that that is such a cornerstone of your work. And you have an offering coming up soon with that,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, the Monogamy Detox is starting up again, April 23rd, and that's an 8-month program now. But you can take each course separately. So the first course is Rewilding Relationships, and that's really all about how we reframe ourselves away from the relationship escalator, away
Mhm,
from those like one true soulmate mythology, and start to broaden our sense of how we relate.
mhm,
And looking at the different layers of trust that we build through in
mhm,
relationships, looking
mhm,
at the different
mhm,
qualities of connection we
mhm,
create.
mhm,
Um, and I think that's something that a lot of the times in monogamous world we don't get permission to think about. Like
mhm,
I I always talk about it as like, we take our time to work into friendships usually, right?
mhm,
We
mhm,
sort of go, okay, who is this person? I kind of like what they're into. Then we move into safety. Then
mhm,
over time we start to be more vulnerable and open with a new
mhm.
friend. And
Yeah.
then eventually we're like, oh yeah, this is a really cool friendship. But we do our romantic relationships in monogamy land, certainly in almost an opposite way.
Mhm.
Like, hey, there's some chemistry here. Let's pretend we're in a relationship and let's reverse engineer the intimacy and safety and awareness.
Yeah.
And that can work out sometimes, but it's not always the long term, because then you're always being confronted with,
Yeah.
there's a fantasy I have of this connection, and that's different from the reality of this
Mhm.
connection. and there's
Yeah.
a lot of grief involved. And I think we confront that even more in non-monogamy when you're having a fantasy about multiple partners.
Yeah.
There's more of the breaking of that fantasy.
Yes. Absolutely.
And a lot of the time where that fantasy gets broken is where we get into that insecure space, where we reach out for support, where we want to talk through something with our friends and get that like reality check. And when we don't have that supportive community around us,
Mm-hmm.
then
Mm-hmm.
we're not going to get the support that we need.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Which is why something like a community discussion group is so important.
Yeah.
And I'm just continually grateful for folks coming out and participating, and for us creating. And I'm happy we're doing these debriefs as well, because when I was, whatever, 10, 15 years ago, when I was starting my polyamorous journey, I was not in a place that had an in-person discussion group. And so, so sometimes, geographically, you are not in a place where you can get out live to community. And so I'm really glad that we're able to bring what we can from the community discussion group to the internet at large.
Yeah. Likewise. To me, it's all about the democratizing of support, right?
Mm-hmm.
And making things more accessible. There's that saying, like, if it's not accessible to the poor, it's not radical or revolutionary. And
Mm-hmm.
I take that into like, how do we create accessibility? Like, if we really want to be making a shift, we can't just gatekeep that all the time. There has to be accessibility for that. And these discussion groups are free to attend. We have a wonderful location. People can go buy food and drinks and support our very generous hosts that way.
But also don't have to. You're also welcome to just come and participate. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to me, it is that space of finding the camaraderie and the rapport, and I think just right down on a somatic level that creates so much support for us as human beings, to know that there are spaces where we share similar values, and they're not always the same values, but being able to have that discourse about them helps us get more clear in ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we're choosing a new topic each month, which we hope affects as many people as possible, so that we can have that unifying experience of talking about how it all affects us together. Yeah. And like you said, thank you so much for bringing that up, because yes, free community resources about polyamory are so important. That is one of the reasons why I am such a believer in this discussion group. And just in terms of, I'm really appreciating that you and I are doing this for free, and also that that I'm able to offer free learning sessions as well. That's really important to me and is a foundation of my work. And so being able to, to have this experience of affirmation and camaraderie, and feeling less alone out there in the monogamous world.
On that note, do you want to share what our topic is for next month?
I am going to ask you to share what our topic is for next month.
So for May, we're going to be talking about polycules and anarchules.
Yes.
And building those wider networks of relationships.
Yeah. So relationship networks. I think a lot of folks are familiar with the term polycule. That can be a relationship structure, whether it's a throuple or a triad or a quad or a larger network. And then do you want to tell us what an anarchule is?
An anarchule is that same concept, but it's not limited to the romantic, intimate partners. It includes friends. It includes family of choice. It includes kinship networks. So it's coming from more of that relationship anarchist perspective with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm excited about that. That is on May 5th in Vancouver. And you can get at either Mel or I if you want information about that. We have a Facebook group, Vancouver Polyamory 101, that you can join and get the information for these events. And they're also in Plura as well.
Yeah.
I'm
looking forward to it.
Me too.
We're going to be continuing through the summer, and we're going to have some guest speakers coming in, some panelists, some guest facilitators. There's lots of stuff kind of in the works.
We are going to continue through the summer, which I'm really excited about. And I love our location too. I'm always saying, the food is really good. Like,
it's so good.
It's really good. I find myself looking forward to the dinner that I have there every month. So yeah, it's really good. And I like it's centrally located in Vancouver. It's transit accessible. So yeah, I really do enjoy it. Looking forward to the next one.
Well, thank you so much for joining, Megan, and having our little debrief chat about the discussions.
Yes.
And if folks want to find more about your free learning sessions and so forth, where can they find you?
Yeah, so my primary platform is Instagram. You can find me at Non-Monogamy Coaching Vancouver. You can also find my website at nonmonogamycoachingvancouver.com. And yeah, you can sign up for a free learning session, and I hope to see you there.
And for folks wondering where they can find me, I'm on Instagram at Radical Relating, and you can also hop onto radicalrelating.ca or visit monogamydetox.com.
Yes, I'm excited about your upcoming course. I think it's such a wonderful offering. It's really well known in the community as being really amazing. So I'm
Aw,
really excited that you're offering it again.
we'll see you all next time.
Yeah, see ya. Thank you.